There are moments that do not simply upset a community. They echo. They linger in places where silence should rest peacefully. They shake something inside you that you did not even know could be shaken. This story begins with one of those moments. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to see how far this conversation is reaching. It begins with a single video, less than a minute long, shot on a phone, uploaded for entertainment. And yet, it carried the weight of a decade of grief for a family, the weight of sacrifice for a soldier who never came home, and the weight of a father who suddenly realized that his own son had betrayed everything he spent his career defending. It happened on a gray Saturday afternoon, the kind where the wind feels a little colder than it should. In Riverside Cemetery, rows of white stones stood in quiet formation, marking the resting places of Rhode Island's veterans. Among them was the grave of Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, an Army Ranger who had given his life during a mission in Afghanistan. His wife visited him every week. His daughter, now 10, still left drawings on the grass. His story was etched into stone, but his presence was alive in the hearts of the people who loved him. That is where a young man named Kyle Henderson walked in with 2 friends and a phone raised like a badge of confidence. 21 years old, loud, careless, ready to record whatever brought him views, ready to shock whoever might get offended, ready to say anything because he believed there would never be a consequence he could not walk away from. After all, his father made the laws. What could possibly happen to him? The recording began with laughter, shoes scraping across the grass, jokes about the quiet stillness of the cemetery. They spoke as if the place were a stage and the dead were props. They stepped on graves without looking down. They knocked over small flags left by families. All of it was just content to them. Just a backdrop for a trend called the Disrespect Challenge, a challenge meant to push boundaries for amusement. Then Kyle saw the headstone of Staff Sergeant Torres. The medals carved into the stone caught his attention. The dates of service, the words Bronze Star and Purple Heart. Something in him decided that this stone would make perfect content. He spoke loudly into the camera, his voice echoing off the quiet markers as if the quiet itself offended him. He read the inscription with mocking exaggeration. He treated the name of a man who had died saving others as if it were part of a joke. His friends laughed. One hesitated barely, but did not intervene. And then Kyle lifted his foot and kicked the headstone with a force that made the camera shake. A crack split across the stone, a scar across a place that had already known too much pain. He laughed again. He posed next to the damage. He shrugged off his friend's discomfort. He said the words that would later ring through a courtroom like a hammer hitting steel. Dead people do not care. They cannot do anything about it. And if anyone has a problem with it, my father is a state senator. He will take care of it. He added more kicks, more laughter, more mockery. Then he ended the video with a few careless words about pushing boundaries and gaining followers. The damage was done. The video was posted, and within hours, the world saw it. But one person saw it not from a screen, but from the ground itself. Maria Torres arrived at the cemetery after a co-worker called her voice trembling with shock. Maria watched the video before she even got out of her car. She watched a stranger kick the stone that bore her husband's name. She watched him laugh at the sacrifice that had taken everything from her and her daughter. She watched someone stomp over the place where she had cried countless nights, whispered countless prayers, and tried countless times to explain to her daughter why her father was not coming home. She ran to the grave. She saw the crack. She saw the trampled flowers. She sank to her knees, holding the broken pieces of her heart in her hands. And she was not alone. At that same cemetery, on that same day, just 4 rows away, another man knelt at another grave. State Senator William Henderson visited his father's grave every Saturday morning. His father was a Korean War veteran. He came every week out of love, out of respect, out of ritual. And when he stood to leave, he heard crying nearby. He walked toward the sound, because any decent human would. He saw a widow grieving over a damaged headstone. He saw the crack. He saw her pain. He asked if she was all right. She showed him the video. She told him the boys had filmed everything. She told him that one of them bragged about having a father who was a state senator. And then she hit play. The senator watched the video on her phone. He saw the face of the boy kicking the grave. He saw the grin. He heard the laughter. He heard his own name. And everything inside him collapsed. He whispered the words he never imagined he would say. "That is my son." There are moments that change a parent forever. This was one of them. He did not try to defend Kyle. He did not try to soften the truth. He did not blame peer pressure, the challenge, the culture, or the camera. He did not tell Maria that his son was a good boy who made a bad decision. Instead, he knelt beside the damaged stone, the stone that belonged to a man he had never met but deeply respected. He laid his hand on the crack his son had created and said in a voice that shook, "Staff Sergeant Torres, I am so sorry. My son dishonored you. He dishonored my father. He dishonored this place. I will make this right." He called the police from the cemetery. He gave them Kyle's information. He told them to arrest him. He promised he would not interfere in any way. And when Kyle was arrested later that evening, he still believed his father would fix everything. He had not learned yet what accountability feels like. 10 days later, he walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, wearing the expression of a young man who assumed he would walk out with little more than a lecture. He sat across from the widow of the man he had mocked. Her daughter sat beside her, holding a photo of her father in uniform. And sitting in the back row, silently, was Senator Henderson himself. Judge Caprio watched the video in the courtroom. No one made a sound. The laughter in the recording echoed like a wound being reopened. And when it ended, the judge looked at Kyle with an expression that carried disappointment, far heavier than anger could ever be. Kyle attempted to minimize what he had done. He said it was just a challenge. He said it was not serious. He said he barely kicked the stone. He said the soldier had been dead for years and would not know the difference. The room reacted before the judge did. Gasps, murmurs, Maria crying into her hands, her daughter's shoulders shaking. Judge Caprio spoke with a steadiness that felt colder than fury. He reminded Kyle that graves are not stones, but the last gifts families have. He reminded him that heroes earn their resting places through sacrifice, not hashtags. He reminded him that Maria and Sophia had lived 10 years with a wound that would never fully close, and he had torn it open without a second thought. Then he addressed the arrogance behind Kyle's belief that his father would protect him. He called Senator Henderson forward. Kyle turned and saw the father he had counted on, the father whose name he had used like a shield. But this father did not walk forward with a plan to rescue him. He walked forward with heartbreak in his steps, and in a voice that trembled at first and steadied only through willpower, Senator Henderson told the truth. He explained how he discovered what his son had done. He explained that he had been at the cemetery that same day. He explained that Maria had shown him the video. He explained that while he honored his own father, his son dishonored another family's hero. He told the judge that he had called the police himself. Then he turned to his son. Kyle tried to interrupt, but the senator's voice cut him off for the first time in his life. "Be quiet. You will not talk over me today. You will not excuse what you did today. You will listen." The senator then walked to Maria and Sophia and knelt in front of them. He apologized with the sincerity of a man who understood that his leadership meant nothing if he could not teach his own child the meaning of sacrifice. He told them that he would not protect Kyle from the consequences. He told them he would pay for a new headstone. He told them he would do everything in his power to honor Michael Torres. The entire courtroom felt something shift, something deep, something rare. Judge Caprio delivered a sentence that was not about revenge, but about transformation. Jail time, fines, restitution, hundreds of hours of service in veteran cemeteries, a ban on social media, mandatory education, and 800 handwritten letters to every family with a loved one buried in Riverside Cemetery. 800 stories, 800 reminders of lives lived, battles fought, and sacrifices made. Those letters changed Kyle in ways no punishment alone could. He learned the faces behind the stones. He learned the stories behind the flags. He learned the cost behind every word carved into granite. Months later, after completing his sentence, Kyle stood once again in Riverside Cemetery. But this time, there was no camera, no friends, no laughter, only humility. He approached Maria, not knowing if she would speak to him at all. He apologized with the sincerity that came from understanding, not fear. And Maria, holding the memory of her husband close, chose forgiveness because that is what her husband would have done.